Hello, sunshine. I'm Alexi, Lalas, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This episode, we'll be talking Rashford offside, El Clasico, George and Tammy, paywalls, Pro-Rel, U.S. Women's National Team 2023 kickoff, Pulisic, Club World Cup, LA Galaxy protest, the Klopp drop, soccer moms, and so much more. But first, joining me, as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox Soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how you doing on this Monday, January 16th in the year 2023?
Doing well. Welcome back to Los Angeles.
Thank you very much. As I mentioned last week, I was in Philadelphia, the great city of Philadelphia, wonderful American history there, and wonderful history of hosting conferences and soccer conferences. And again, the coaching conference was held there, and United Coaches Association Conference, I don't know the official name for it, but anyway, it's this yearly get-together of coaches from around the country and around the world. Wonderful panels and wonderful exhibitions, people with booths as far as the eye can see, tracksuits and sambas as far as I don't think people do sambas anymore, but you know what I mean. It's you are in the belly of the beast, as it were, especially relative to what a lot of people are screaming and yelling about nowadays of this this ecosystem that exists right now. Well, this was it. I loved it because it was wonderful to see so many people and faces that I hadn't seen in so long, but also just to talk about the game with people that come from it from all different angles, but everyone's kind of in this soccer tent, and obviously a lot of coaches. And so I had a good time. Saw a lot of people, including my former coach 35 years ago, Bob Riasso, the great Bob Riasso, head coach of Rutgers University. Thankfully, took the call from my father, who said, I got this kid. He's an okay student, and he's a pretty good soccer player. Will you at least meet him? And we drove the 16 hours out to exit 9 off the turnpike there in New Jersey. And he looked at me and said, well, I can invite you to preseason, and I can get you into the agriculture school. And I said, well, I don't have anything else, and so sign me up. We drove back the 16 hours. I packed. I came back to Rutgers. My dad kicked me out there on exit 9 and said, good luck. Barely slowed the car down, and the rest is history, as they say. But I got to see Bob Riasso again, and he has not changed. But, you come in contact with people that changed your life, and he certainly did. It's cool to hang out and shoot together with him and so many others.
That agricultural degree, has that served you well in life? And
so,
your garden there when you're working?
So people ask me that about the agriculture school. It is called Cook College anyway. It's gone through a bunch of different name changes, but it was the only way I was going to get into a school, and the only way I was going to get into Rutgers. Having said that, I always wanted to major in English and music. You were not allowed to do that at the agriculture school. I'll never forget taking beef and sheep production. I swear to God, I kid you not, this was the name of a course. And, there were real serious people that were there for the ag part of that education. I was not. I wanted to major in English, but I had to take credits. And so I'll never forget, thankfully, the soccer gods were smiling upon me in that the teacher of this course, the professor, turned out to be a soccer fan. The final was 32 pages long. The bovine and ovine discussion that went on week after week after week was lost in me. And at one point during the course, the professor asked to see me after class and said, listen, I know this is not for you. I recognize this. If you just sit in the back and don't bust my balls and don't do anything stupid, okay, I'm going to help you get through this course. And bless him, I don't know if he's still around, but bless him, because ultimately I did find a way past and get the credits for that class. And it's one of the few classes that I actually have a memory of. So he made an impression.
I have a restaurant recommendation.
Oh, okay. What do you got?
Friday night, I had an incredible meal. This Argentinian steakhouse called Carlitos Gardel on Melrose Avenue in West Hollywood. I went there for my buddy Dan Houtman's birthday.
Mm-hmm.
One of the better meals I've had in a very long time. Everything delicious. Appetizers, empanadas, chorizo. And then we all got steak, obviously. The sides, cream corn. Dessert, I had flan. Everything delicious, top-notch, great ambiance, terrific service. High marks all the way. I know my last recommendation, Bestia, didn't pan out so well for you, but
it didn't turn out in terms of the portions, but the actual food was very, very good. So this is a 2 thumbs up for you again. This place that you're recommending right now.
absolutely.
Okay, all right, good. I just wanted to make sure. All right. Well, I will check it out, and maybe others will check it out. Have you watched anything, my friend?
I have been on a movie barrage the last couple of weeks in preparation for the Oscars. We can talk more about this when we get closer to the Oscars, but I've seen The Banshees of Inisherin.
All right.
I've seen All Quiet on the Western Front. I've seen The Fabelmans. I've seen Tar.
How's the Fabelmans thing? Any good?
I enjoyed it.
Okay.
Enjoyed it.
That's one I haven't seen.
I even saw Elvis on the flight back from Fort Lauderdale to LA. I saw Glass Onion, and after we're done taping today, I might go see this Argentina 1985, which is a movie that might win for Best Foreign Film.
I've heard it's very good. All right. Let's see. I don't have much other than George and Tammy. I don't know, it's about 6 episodes, and it goes through the relationships and the ups and downs of the great George Jones and Tammy Wynette, two country legends, and all of the trials and tribulations and just craziness that was. I mean, he was a raging alcoholic, and that they loved each other, and it goes through all the ups and downs, like I said. And sometimes when you have too many episodes for a story like that, and I think this was too many episodes, especially when it's a music type of biopic here. I know that they were musicians, but at a certain point, it just became too much music, if it possibly can be. And I love their music. I love their music, and obviously it's a huge part of the story. And they were almost communicating with each other through the music, and the music in and of itself kept them together at times when in any other circumstance and situation, they would have run very, very fast their separate ways. But at times it plodded along with the musical interludes, even though I know it was necessary to show them singing. But well acted and certainly interesting from a musical doc. It's not a musical biodoc type of thing. Ready to light this candle, my friend?
Let's do it.
Okay, where do you want to start here? I mean, there's all sorts of stuff, and we have a jam-packed show for you today. But where would you like to start?
Let's start with the U.S. women's national team.
Okay.
They have their first games of 2023 coming up, and we can use that to set up the whole year for them, which is a big one, obviously, a World Cup year. So they will face World Cup co-host New Zealand twice here in New Zealand, which is where they'll play all 3 of their group games at the World Cup.
Yep.
In February, they have the She Believes Cup. They'll face Canada, Japan, and Brazil in that. The World Cup comes your way in July and August, live on Fox Sports. The U.S. is going for an unprecedented three-peat. No country's ever won 3 straight World Cups in the men's or women's side. So as we begin 2023 here for the women, what are your overall thoughts?
My overall thoughts are that this is still a team in transition, and yet 6 months away from the most important part and really the defining part of any national team coach and national team. There are still question marks as to whether they can transition with the new players that they have, the new coach they have relative to a World Cup, and not just the players, but the transfer of that winning mentality. And does that translate ultimately into yet another World Cup? And as you mentioned, a historic and unprecedented type of victory. There's still plenty of usual suspects even in this roster for New Zealand, and I think this is great for them to get the lay of the land in New Zealand, where you mentioned all of their group stage games are going to be played. And look, the U.S. women's national team in a World Cup, nobody's ever worried about them getting out of the group. But an understanding of where you're going to play and being in country, I think is important in the men's and women's game relative to a World Cup. You still got the Alyssa Nares, who I think is going to continue on in goal. Becky Sauerbrunn in the back there, probably the final go around for her. But then you have Naomi Girma, who's coming on strong. Sofia Huerta. These types of players that are making a case. Midfield still populated with the Horans and Lavelles and Meuses and Sullivans that we have seen in the past. Up top, Trinity Rodman, the 20-year-old. I think that's going to be interesting. Lynn Williams back into the picture. Alex Morgan there. Catarina Macario still waiting in the wings. Hopefully she recovers enough from the injury to make a run. And by all accounts, she she will, and that'll be interesting and set up some good competition up top. No Alyssa Thompson, who just was drafted number 1 by Angel City, the 18-year-old phenom, and we did see her appear in the game against England. And look, Megan Rapinoe will still be in the mix going forward, and these types of players, Kelly O'Hara possibly from the old guard and that new guard. Ultimately, I think that the success of this team is going to come down to their ability to find a way to break down teams, and we've seen this in the men's game too, to find a way to break down teams that understand what they're about, have come to the recognition that they are just going to absorb pressure and can do it very, very well, and in doing so can stifle and frustrate the U.S., but can they find ways in very compact, difficult type of situations to break down teams that are going to try to frustrate them?
If you glance at that roster, you might wonder, where's Mallory Pugh? She's on there, but she's now Mallory Swanson.
Exactly.
She got married in December to Major League Baseball star Dansby Swanson, formerly of the Atlanta Braves, who just signed a big free agent contract with the Chicago Cubs. So Dansby's got a lot going on in his life, a marriage, a big free agent deal. But yeah, Mallory Swanson now is on there. She took his name then.
She took his name, right?
She took his. Are you okay with that?
How
Do you find that to be an archaic?
No, I love it. I love it. It's wonderful. Better do it or don't. I don't care, but it's great. Wonderful. Mallory Swanson. So on the back of her jersey, it will be Swanson now going forward and forever. Well, not forever, but hopefully forever. But for now, we're going to call her Mallory Swanson. It
is a shame no Sophia Smith. She just was voted U.S. Female Player of the Year, but she's out with an injury. Megan Rapinoe out as well. But as you mentioned, no shortage of big names. And you talked about the group stage at the World Cup. The opponents there, Vietnam, the Netherlands, which is a rematch of the 2019 final, and then a team yet to be determined. It'll be either Portugal, Thailand, or Cameroon. You might recall the U.S. squeaked by Thailand in their opening match of the last World Cup.
Good chance it's going to be Portugal, I would think. I mean, that's where the safe money is, but you never know. Again, this is an expanded World Cup. We'll know, by the way, that third group by February 22nd, the third group team for the U.S. But again, getting out of the group it's not even it's an afterthought when it comes to the U.S. Women's national team going forward. By the way, the timing of this World Cup, because we always talk about that, and people were up in the middle of the night during the Qatar World Cup here recently. There will be games in the middle of the night, but there'll also be games in kind of prime time-ish. For example, the first 2 games of the group stage for the U.S. actually are going to happen at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So that's a nice kind of evening delight, if you will, when it comes to the U.S. women's national team in the World Cup. But we'll be watching these games and making some, assessments as to where they are right now, because the summer's going to come quick.
And these upcoming friendlies against New Zealand available on HBO Max. We went over the talent in our last podcast, Kyle Martino and company. So looking forward to that. You can watch the games, and then as long as you're on, you can fire up a movie afterwards, perhaps The Banshees of Inisherin, make a whole night out of it.
You can watch all of them. And later in the pod, we're going to talk a little bit more about the new world of broadcasting soccer out there, and the brave new world that we are in. Other news when it comes to the national team.
I mentioned Sophia Smith won U.S. Female Player of the Year.
Well-deserved.
Tyler Adams won for Male Player of the Year, also well-deserved. He captained the U.S. at the World Cup, I think was widely regarded as the U.S.'s best player in that tournament, won a trophy with Leipzig earlier in the year, and has done very well in the Premier League since joining Leeds United, playing under Jesse Marsch there. So I don't think you can have any complaints about the selection.
I don't think so at all. And it's interesting because when we prepare for World Cups, oftentimes they will ask us, who should we be looking for? And I think for the most part, the majority of us talked about Tyler Adams, and yet he lived up to it in the World Cup. And that doesn't always happen, Mosse, as we know. But he lived up to it in terms of his actual play, and people could recognize how important he was for the U.S. team and is going to be for the U.S. team going forward. And then, his wonderful, incredibly thoughtful and articulate way in which he responded before that Iran game, and kind of led the team in that way in his press conferences. So I think he had a wonderful World Cup, but this is not just about the World Cup. This is about the year, and I think that I find it hard to argue about anybody else relative to the impact and the face, if you will, of U.S. soccer from the men's side right now. It has to be Tyler Adams. So well-deserved for both players. And, these are players that we're going to find in the next World Cup this next summer, and certainly in 26 when it comes to Tyler Adams.
Going through the list of past winners, trivia question for you. Who won this award in 1995?
1995. That would be back in the 1900s. Who cares about that? Would that be yours truly? Is that
Alexi Lalas?
Oh my goodness, they'll give it to anybody. Boy, they were scraping the bottom of the barrel back then, Mosse. Thank goodness we have moved on to a Tyler Adams level of quality in terms of player and person. So, boy, there's no accounting for bad taste.
Christian Pulisic has won this award 3 times. His future at club level very much in flux right now. Graham Potter, speaking about Pulisic, said there's no chance of him leaving in this window. He wasn't going to leave anyway, but he's definitely not now, given the fact that he's injured. He's going to be out at least a couple of months. But in the meantime, Chelsea continued to make moves that impact Pulisic. This Todd Bullock can't sit still for 5 minutes.
Right.
They've already acquired Christopher Nkunku for next season, João Felix on loan for the remainder of this campaign, and then Chelsea go out and sign Ukrainian winger Mikhailo Mudryk for a fee that with bonuses could get up to £100 million. He's this player that Arsenal had been linked with.
Yeah.
He wanted to go to Arsenal, but Arsenal were balking at paying that price. They were trying to negotiate the fee down a bit. Chelsea swoop in and say, we'll pay it, no problem. They also gave him a mammoth contract. So this move has massive Pulisic implications. Even if he doesn't leave in this window, I think in the summer he's probably going to have to go.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when Potter says there's no chance of him leaving. No, he'll be out past that date that they've given, and there was never any consideration about him leaving anyway. I find that a little strange because everybody there has to be a consideration, unless Potter came in and just, along with management, believed that this guy was too important to even talk to anybody about. But to your point now, I mean, there's a lot of new talent that comes in, and that new talent is going to play. Okay, this isn't the new talent that they're signing to loan out in the way that Chelsea have done in the past. This is new talent that they're bringing in to challenge and to be, the leaders going forward, and they need it. And so, by the way, financial fair play and all this kind of stuff, just go buy more talent.
And this Todd Bowley, I know from the moment he arrived, the English media has been dying to portray him as this rube American who doesn't know what he's doing and is just throwing money around nilly-willy. And I don't know, the jury's still out on it. I know the argument that better to have an owner that spends than one who doesn't spend. And hey, Chelsea are struggling, so why not try to improve the team? But as you always say, you want to feel like there's a plan. And I'm not quite certain here with Chelsea. They're a bit all over the place. They did sign this young French defender, Benoit Badiashile, who made his debut. We'll talk about Chelsea's game in the next segment, but played very well. So that's a signing that, who knows, might work out. But it just seems like they're throwing a lot of money around here, and I'm kind of wondering what's the overall plan.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are those out there that believe that as long as you're spending money, you're safe in terms of criticism. And that's... you can hedge your bets with that, absolutely. But then there also comes a point, especially when you're talking about a super club, that, even with the change of ownership, is still spending a tremendous amount of money. Then the assessment, because if you're always going to spend money, that's fine. But then the assessment has to be, but are you spending it well? And is it translating into results? Is it translating into good business going forward? And that's where I think the jury is still out. Don't get me wrong. If I'm a fan of Chelsea, and even if I'm not a fan of Chelsea, I want teams spending. It's not my money, so go ahead, spend until your heart's content. And it may work out or it may not work out now. But I still think spending bad money is still better than spending no money at all. When you are a fan and you equate money with ambition and you equate money with belief and support of your club.
Speaking of Premier League clubs spending money, Aston Villa in the news. They look set to splash $22 million on Chicago Fire's teenage Colombian forward John Duran. If this deal is confirmed, it would tie the second biggest outgoing transfer in MLS history, equaling the amount that Bayern paid Vancouver for Alphonso Davies, trailing only the $26 million that Newcastle paid Atlanta United for Miguel Almiron. So, we talk about MLS signing young South American players. Part of the appeal is they've been selling that they can serve as a bridge to Europe. So from a proof of concept perspective, this is actually a deal that folks in MLS seem to be celebrating. MLS is the only league, by the way, that can celebrate incoming transfers and outgoing transfers as evidence of progress. It kind of occupies a unique place in the transfer market right now.
Yeah, I mean, but this one is really interesting because, unfortunately, because of the irrelevance of Chicago Fire. This one is strange because it just looks like that the Chicago Fire is a way station, because, Gaga Slonina for $15 million to Chelsea, and now we see this transfer. Look, in terms of return on investment, they paid $2 million, whatever it was for them, the Chicago Fire. This is incredible to be able to flip this, if you will, and for this amount of money, or potentially up to $22 million. That is incredible return. And so well done for them with the identification of the player, the ability to woo that player, the ability to get an incredible price at that point, and now to be able to flip it. But, with Miguel Almiron, you're looking at an MLS Cup. You're looking at fundamentally changing the way that people think about your team. In that case, it was an expansion team, so it was establishing from that moment. And so you got the value of the player on the field that expanded and helped your brand. In that case, it was Atlanta United. Chicago is not getting anything relative to their brand other than the pat on the back for them doing good business. This doesn't necessarily, and look, I know you can take that money and put it back into Chicago. So if you do take that money and now you become relevant because you've had this good business here, okay, fine. But this is where it's a little bit different because it's specifically coming from Chicago. But it doesn't change the fact that this is really, this is good business. And from a league perspective, having players that are coming to MLS, that are using it as a platform to show their wares, and then moving on in an incredible way from a business perspective, that is that proof of concept that you want. And it's what a lot of people have been talking about. I just wish that Chicago got more than money out of it.
It's good to have another example because MLS has been having to live off Miguel Almiron for a while. Tati Castellanos was a bit of a failure in that regard. The fact that they couldn't get any European club to meet NYCFC's asking price, and City Football Group had to step in. He was dead set on going to Europe, so they just moved him to another one of their clubs, Girona. Now, if he plays well at Girona and gets a big transfer to a bigger European club, MLS will have been indirectly responsible for that, but you wanted that move to be him going straight from NYCFC to a bigger European club for a big number. It didn't happen, but you do get that here with Duran. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I don't want to poo-poo this deal or these types of deals because they are, I think, in the greater scheme of things, these are good, and these are good images to have, and this is a good message to send out there. I'm just, like I said, I want. Instead of just being a way station, I want it to be a place in which you leave your mark. Nobody's going to remember Duran other than his price tag.
The Seattle Sounders getting ready to compete in the Club World Cup.
Here we go.
The draw for that competition occurred on Friday. From the moment Seattle won the CONCACAF Champions League, all anybody in MLS circles has been talking about is the prospect of facing Real Madrid. That's the big payoff here. An MLS team playing a competitive match against Real Madrid with the whole world watching. And I've been saying, hold your horses on that. First, Seattle has to win a quarterfinal match. And over the years, that's been a 50-50 proposition for Mexican clubs. And then depending on the draw, they might have to go through Flamengo as well. One of the hurdles was cleared on Friday because Seattle was placed in the same side of the bracket as Real Madrid. So if they win their quarterfinal, they would face Real Madrid in the semis. Seattle in the quarterfinals will face either Al Ahly of Egypt or Auckland City.
Winnable games.
You'd rather it be Auckland City. Al Ahly have some pedigree. They've been in this competition a lot, so more experience. But still, they would be certainly beatable as well. That match, February 4th in Tangier, and then if Seattle wins that, February 7th in Rabat, they would take on reigning European champions Real Madrid.
By the way, Morocco, there's something in the water over there, men's and women's, and they're crushing it when it comes to the game.
So the Club World Cup, it's usually the 6 regional champions and then the domestic champion of the host nation. But in this case, Wydad Casablanca, the Moroccan side, they're not only the Moroccan champions, but they won the African Champions League. So that slot ended up going to the runners-up in the African Champions League, which is Al Ahly. So that's the only reason they're in it. In terms of the rest of the field, Flamengo on the other side of the bracket, they will face either Wydad Casablanca or Al Hilal. Saudi Arabian side, they are the arch rivals of the club Cristiano Ronaldo just signed for Al Nasser. Al Hilal feature several players that were on that Saudi Arabian World Cup team, including your boy Salem Al Dassari, who scored in the win over Argentina. Saudi Arabia, you might recall, the only team to beat Argentina in this last World Cup, amazingly enough. So I'm looking forward to this. There's no country, by the way, that takes the Club World Cup more seriously than Brazil. So I'm reading tons of articles about it already, and folks are looking at Real Madrid's indifferent form, which we're going to talk about in the next segment, and Flamengo is getting their hopes up that they think there's a chance here. Remember, the European club has won the last 9 editions of this competition, 14 of the last 15, so you just go in assuming that they're going to win it. In this case, it would be Real Madrid. But Flamengo drawing strength from the fact that in 2019, when they were in this, they played Liverpool to a dead-even game. It was maybe the best performance I've seen from a Brazilian club in this competition. They ended up losing in extra time to a Roberto Firmino goal. But if they play like that here, I think they could give Real Madrid a real run for their money. But I'm getting way ahead of myself.
Sure, but this is all good stuff. These are all good things to talk about. Despite the struggles from a year-long perspective of Seattle, this is still a good team. And there was the burnout, if you will, from winning, from winning the championship, the CONCACAF championship, and then CCL, and then not being able to translate that into the MLS situation. But now it's over. Last year, from an MLS perspective, is over, and you reap the reward here, which is the opportunity. And yes, you represent Seattle, but you also represent Major League Soccer, and we want that to happen. So I'll be looking forward to that too. Morocco's going to get a World Cup at some point too. Anyway.
Well, they were finalists in 26.
I know. They've always kind of been there and always been the bridesmaids, but they are doing big things when it comes to it. Okay, let's see what else here. Should we move on to the LA Galaxy?
A couple of MLS news items before we go. LA Galaxy supporters not happy. Let me get the name of the supporters group. Is this the LA Riot Squad?
Well, it's all of the LA supporters group. So that would be the LA Riot Squad, the Galaxians, Angel City Brigade, Galaxy Outlaws with a Z, and the Ghost Ultra Galaxy. All have come together, and they released a statement. And they're not happy. They're not happy with the direction of their club, and in particular, they're not happy with Chris Klein, the leader of the LA Galaxy for many, many years. And I'm going to paraphrase this. You can go read it if you want. Given recent news regarding Chris Klein's contract extension, leadership of the LA Galaxy supporters groups have unanimously agreed not to attend matches until change in the front office is made. And, they believe that the front office practices have placed on-field business in higher importance than, off-field business in higher importance than the on-field product. Knock yourself out. Go ahead. If that's what you believe you need to do in order to make your point and in order to get the product you as customers and consumers of the LA Galaxy want and feel that you deserve, then fine. I don't know if this is ultimately going to have an effect on AEG, which is ultimately responsible for the Los Angeles Galaxy. I don't think that this is ultimately going to have an effect on Chris Klein, who, as they mentioned, just signed a contract extension. It is, I don't think, a arguable point right now that the LA Galaxy, from a competitive standpoint, has not been what they once were. And that it comes in the face of the LAFC, not only winning MLS Cup, but winning this LA soccer war that is going on here in our city. That highlights it even more. Having said that, I asked on Twitter if there was a much more specific list of grievances, and I read through some of them. I'm not going to read through all of them. You can go check it out now out there online about, they go through what has happened under Chris Klein from this club, or what I get for them, what hasn't happened. And so, I understand you're angry. You are the market. The LA Galaxy has a product. This is a product that has been a premium product since its inception back in 1996 for the most part, notwithstanding my time at the Galaxy, leading the Galaxy. And you are looking at this product and you are saying, why should I, as the customer and the consumer, continue to buy this product if the quality has suffered? And you want change to happen. Again, I don't think this is going to necessarily change anything, but you are going to make your point. I don't know if this is, from an aesthetic point of view, is going to be a gaping hole in the stadium. I don't know if you are able to resell those tickets or if they're just not going to miss a beat. I don't know how much this is going to ultimately cut through the clutter. And so is this voice going to be heard? I appreciate it, and I can respect that you are coming together as groups and making your voice heard, and having a protest in this moment. I just don't know how loud that voice and protest is going to be. But we have seen, certainly in recent times, where fans are coming together and they not only make their voice heard, but they affect change. You look at Super League and those types of things that are happening. So I don't know. We'll see, Mosse. But part of me enjoys that there is this cooperation and understanding and passion and partnership in order to have your voice heard. And part of me says, it's soccer, it's sports, it's professional sports, and this is all solved with winning. And if it goes beyond actual winning, I just want to know, some more of the specifics as to why. Because if this is ultimately all just solved by having a winning team, this seems like a bit much.
Yeah, Manchester United fans very quiet about the Glazers right now. So you notice winning does tend to make these issues go away. They better retain Jovan Kirovski, by the way. That's my ticket hookup, so if nothing else. Last item, and then we'll wrap up this segment. It looks like Josef Martinez is headed to Inter Miami. You might recall Gonzalo Higuain retired, so another South American star striker headed to that club.
And I hope that he arrives in Florida with a renewed and rekindled fire. But for Josef Martinez, what it's been about is how do we see the Josef Martinez that we came to know and love? Because that guy, he checked out from an injury perspective a while ago, and he has not returned even close to that form. So maybe a new lease on life down there in southern Florida for Inter Miami, and I would love to see it because he is a legend when it comes to goal scoring in Major League Soccer, but that injury really changed him as a player. But that he's not going anywhere else is kind of good to still have him here in Major League Soccer. And if he starts going and scoring goals, we know once he gets that smell, good things can happen. Anything else, Mosse?
That is it.
All right, let's take let's take our first quick break here. That was a nice meaty segment right there, but we covered a lot of things, so hopefully you found them interesting. We'll take a quick break, and when we do come back, we'll dive into all the scores around Europe. All right, welcome back. All right, Mosse, all sorts of stuff going on over in Europe. Some incredible games, incredible goals, incredible drama. Where should we start? I mean, there's so many things.
Well, you said over in Europe. We'll actually begin in Saudi Arabia.
Oh, okay. It's an extension.
I know what you mean.
Relative to what's going on here.
Because that was
my wife asked me, by the way, about this. Go ahead, explain it, and I'll tell you what.
Yeah, that's where the Spanish Super Cup now takes place. The final was this past weekend, a Clásico, Barcelona-Real Madrid. Barcelona victorious 3-1 in a game that was more lopsided than the scoreline. They dominated from start to finish. Gavi, sensational, a goal and 2 assists. Lewandowski and Pedri also on the score sheet. Benzema scored with virtually the last kick of the game to dress up the scoreline a little bit. But this was an emphatic victory for Barcelona. Their first trophy under Xavi, their first trophy since Messi left. So there's some symbolic meaning there. You might recall they're atop La Liga right now, 3 points clear of Real Madrid. They did get knocked out in the group stage of the Champions League, which is a blight on this season and undercuts a little bit of this idea that Barcelona are back. But nevertheless, domestically, they're doing well. And I do like the way this team is playing. It was a very impressive performance this weekend.
It was an incredible performance. There was only one team on that field, by the way, in Saudi Arabia. And I mentioned my wife when I told her that this was happening. She was like, well, why? Why are they there? I mean, she understands the business behind it too and the money involved, but also the global branding. And whether it's La Liga or anybody else, everybody is looking to plant flags around the world. And this is a wonderful opportunity for them to plant a flag. I'm sure to get paid a ridiculous amount of money to do so and to spread that gospel. We've seen what's happened in Saudi with Cristiano and all this going on. But to outsource this major tournament game and featuring two of the great teams in the world, where the world does tune in. This was important for them. But evidently, Real Madrid didn't get the message that this was an important game because there, like we said, was only one team. Barcelona looked incredible. Gavi, still a teenager, is just so smooth and so clear with how he wants to play. And again, and talk about something in the water. This incredible La Masia type of production just continues to bear fruit.
At the end of that game, when they were just playing keep away and knocking it around, if you close your eyes, you would have thought you were watching Xavi and Iniesta, the way Pedri and Gavi and Busquets, who's obviously the link between these two generations. I mean, some of those triangles they were playing, one touch, boom. But I mean, they made Real Madrid look silly. And that's the flip side of the story. Cristiano Ronaldo, by the way, did visit Real Madrid ahead of this match. I don't think he went to the game. At least they didn't seem to show him at all. But this was another awful performance for a team that's not in good form right now. You're starting to hear the first murmurs of, was it a good idea to sell Casemiro? I know we got a great price for an aging player, but we could probably use him for some of these big games. Real Madrid have an important next few weeks coming up with La Liga games, Copa del Rey, the Club World Cup we mentioned, and then, of course, they face Liverpool in the Champions League round of 16, so they need to get themselves sorted.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Barcelona going out of Champions League. Yeah, that is never good, no matter what the situation is here, but I do think that a lot of people looked at the game, this particular game against Real Madrid, and to your point, the reminder and the reminiscence of what Barcelona once was, and to almost see it playing out there in a new form, I think that will give people, I guess, a renewed belief that this can be, once again, one of the shining lights with the identity that has lasted through the years, because there was a question as to whether they were getting away from that. So it couldn't have gone better for Barcelona, and on the other side, Real Madrid is what they were ultimately. They were horrible.
And Araujo makes such a difference at the back for Barcelona. What a player he is, the Uruguayan. Speaking of Casemiro, he was involved in a big game this past weekend as we shift to England. Manchester United, 2-1 winners over Manchester City. They come from behind to do it. Just to get the elephant in the room out of the way, I thought that United equalizer was farcical. The PMOBGYN, whatever it's called, can put out whatever statements they want. Christina Uncle can say whatever she wants on Twitter. That was a shocking decision. Of course, Rashford is involved in that play. He ran right towards the ball. He lunged towards it. Of course, he affected the way the defenders and Ederson approached that play. And then Bruno Fernandes comes out of nowhere and scores it. We've all seen that play a million times be ruled offsides. If the pass is right to somebody that's in an offside position and he runs towards it, they don't wait for him to touch the ball. They blow the whistle. And for whatever reason, this one they didn't.
But this was also a wonderful illustration about how, while we live in the age of VAR and technology, there is still a subjective nature in the way the laws are interpreted and the way the laws are implied on the field by the human beings. Because I absolutely agree with what you're saying. And I think there are a lot of like-minded people out there that look at that and say that the initial ball was clearly, and again, it's subjective, I guess, but to me, it's clearly to Rashford, okay? That he doesn't touch it in the laws certainly checks some boxes there. But then when you go down to, making an obvious action which clearly impacts on the ability of the opponent to play the ball, then you get into even a moment there where you could argue that he was looking to take the shot and even drops his shoulder at a certain point. So yeah, if that had stood as an offside, I don't think anybody would have complained, including the opposition. And that it didn't comes down to a subjective type of interpretation of this particular law that was made. And part of me is okay, because sometimes I think we forget in this day and age of technology and VAR that there are still subjective decisions. And within those subjective moments, we now have debate. And I know people can scream and yell, but what was the initial complaint about what VAR was going to do? It was going to take all the debate out. It was just going to be clear, black and white. Well, that's not necessarily the case. In many instances it is, but certainly in this instance, I think it gave us a needed reminder how there is a subjective nature and a gray area that still is part of our game. Now, maybe because of this particular play going forward, they'll look to, snuff that out and make it much more clear as to what's going on. But this play dominated the game in terms of the talking points because it was so close, ultimately 2-1. But don't let it take away from the fact that ultimately Manchester United gets a win, and game on, Mosse, when it comes to the top of the EPL.
To give them some credit, I thought they defended brilliantly. Eric Ten Hag pushing all the right buttons. He starts Luke Shaw in the center of defense, and Shaw played very well. Holland barely touched the ball for all of City's possession throughout the game, which you'd expect them to have the ball. they created very little. De Gea had almost nothing to do. So United, they, like I said, I think is a little bit tainted because of the way that equalizer came about. But overall, I think it was a performance that still confirmed the progress that they've made.
City in crisis, or?
Yeah, a little bit wobbly right now.
Yeah, a little bit wobbly. I mean, I'm not going to cry for them, but.
And they're 8 points back of Arsenal, who took care of Tottenham 2-0. Impressive performance for the Gunners. Completely bossed the first half. Should have been up more than 2-0. Saka with this cross that Lloris somehow turned into his own net. A bit of a howler there. And then Odegaard, who is a player who left Real Madrid because he wanted to play regularly, and he didn't see a pathway to that in that midfield with Modric, Kroos, etc. And he was ripped by the Madrid media for showing a lack of ambition. He should have stayed and fought for a place with Real Madrid, but this has proven to be a brilliant decision. He's gone to Arsenal, where the whole team is built around him. Everything runs through him, and he's the star player now for a team that's leading the Premier League and looking like one of the best playmakers in the world. He scored a fantastic second and was terrific the whole game. The second half, Tottenham improved, created some chances. Ramsdale came up big, but I think overall Arsenal were good value for this result. They take the 3 points. Do you want to talk about the game, or do you want to talk about what occurred at the final?
No, let's first talk about the game, and then we'll talk about the jackass. Okay, so look, first off, you were Lloris, okay? What is he doing? By the way, on both goals, okay? Because the Odegaard goal, that's from a long way out. It bounces a bunch of times. He sees ultimately where the ball is going, and he's still. And I know, sometimes I'm hard on goalkeepers. You know, you can't live with them, and you can't throw them off a bridge, and they are a necessary evil. But save the ball. You are a quote-unquote world-class goalkeeper. You know, the first one, everyone's scratching their head. I don't know what he was thinking on that. It does take a deflection, and so maybe there's a little bit of forgiveness when it comes to a deflected type of cross that was just a hopeful smash across, and he somehow contrived to turn it into his own goal. And then the second one, I think he should ultimately do better. Having said that, Arsenal were phenomenal. And what is going to decide whether Arsenal can parlay this into the title is whether they truly believe that they deserve to be where they are. And I know there's a lot of new faces, and everybody's feeling good. But unlike some other leagues where it's 8 points right now in the EPL,
correct,
that should make it over. And yet there's still a sneaking suspicion in part of me that says that I don't quite believe yet that they are destined to win it. And I think you have to get to that point. Now, they might get to the point here very soon, especially with Man City faltering. But I still don't think that this is ultimately decided. So anyway, any final thoughts on the actual game before we turn it to what happened after the game?
Yeah, it's 8 points clear of City, who face Tottenham on Thursday.
Okay.
And then they're 9 points clear of United, and Arsenal hosts Manchester United this upcoming weekend. So some great games coming up in the Premier League. We'll have a better idea of the title race, where we stand. We'll look ahead to those games in our second pod of this week.
Okay.
But yeah, at the final whistle, first, Richarlison, who was behaving like a complete clown the whole game. He was just looking for a fight. I don't know what was wrong with him. But he got into it with Ramsdale, and Gabriel, in trying to push Ramsdale away from Richarlison, pushes him towards the Tottenham fans, and then he gets kicked in the back by a Tottenham fan, which set off a whole brouhaha there.
What a mess. What a mess.
Huh?
So first off, kudos actually to the security, which saw, yes, the security is there to protect the players and to be looking into the audience, if you will, for any problems. But there's also things that can happen on the field. And one of the security guards actually turned around and was able to split the players, because this was at the end of the game. And then, it gets pushed off to to close to the fans that were behind the goal. And then this jackass comes out of the stands, okay, and attempts to kick him. Now, he didn't actually make contact because, again, the security guard actually had a really nice block of the actual kick. It doesn't matter whether he connected or not. There was the attempt to kick by a fan who came out of the stands to kick the opposition goalkeeper. I mean, it wouldn't matter if it was his own goalkeeper or not, but this was a situation where people were asking, well, why didn't they stop the guy from coming out? Keep in mind that we in the modern day and with modern stadiums right now actually err on the side of the spectators because of, the horrific things that have happened in the past where spectators are pent in and up and aren't able to get through. Right now, from a security perspective and a safety perspective, they enable fans to come on the field if and when there is an emergency, but not in this manner, obviously. And look, it's a fine line because you want to give them the outlet and the safety to get on the field, but you also don't want to have a Monica Seles type of situation where a fan comes on and poses a threat to an actual player. This guy not only attempts to kick the goalkeeper, but then turns around and runs off like a little coward, okay? Now, they will have identified, because there's cameras everywhere, and they will identify who this person is, and they will get banned for life and probably face, some sort of criminal action. But this was ridiculous. And again, it kind of shows this. And I know you can get caught up in the game and the emotion, and there's alcohol involved and all that kind of stuff. But this is beyond the pale, and this is ridiculous. And again, this sense of entitlement that fans at times have relative to buying a ticket or being a season ticket holder or being even just a fan of the team, that in that moment thinks that it is okay and appropriate for you to actually come on the field and then attempt to assault a player. By the way, the goalkeeper had his back to him too. So not only are you a coward for running off, but you're also a coward for trying to kick someone from behind. If you're going to kick me from the front, all right? And then stay there. And I wish he had stayed there, all right? He still would have been an asshole, but at least if he had stayed there and taking the beating that he would have gotten and deserved, he wouldn't have been as much of a coward for running away.
Anyway. Boy, you're fired up over that.
It irritates me.
Ron Artest vindicated. Fans are idiots.
Hey, look, it goes both ways, by the way. You're also an asshole and an idiot, and to a certain extent a coward if you're a player and you go up into the stands, too. So just stay where you're supposed to be, people. All right?
All right, just to whip through some other scores from this weekend. Newcastle 1-0 winners over Fulham, so they remain in the top four. Alexander Isak, back from injury, scored a late winner. Fulham missed a penalty in this one. Mitrovic slips, the double kick. That was crazy, huh?
I don't know why is that crazy, especially in this day and age. We are able to see it. It is 2 touches, which we know is against the laws of the game, and they saw it, they judged it, and everything was fine. I don't know. I mean, we don't see it a whole lot. We have seen it in the past, but it was clear that he double kicked it there, and he slipped on the run up. So maybe he should look at his footing and his footwear.
Chelsea with a much-needed win over Crystal Palace, 1-0. Havertz with the goal. I mentioned in our opening segment, the young French defender Benoit Badiashile made his debut and played well. So much-needed 3 points for Graham
Quick
Potter.
question. Do you think that Potter is still the coach come the fall of 2023 at Chelsea?
I do. It seems like Todd Bowley is...
He's just going to plow through with him, right?
Yeah.
Well, he's certainly given him enough money and players.
Very quickly on Chelsea, I'm the president of the João Felix fan club.
Yes.
I'm convinced that he's still an amazing talent that Diego Simeone just mishandled. And so he moves to Chelsea, makes his debut against Fulham, looks absolutely brilliant for 50-something minutes, so I'm feeling vindicated. And then shock, challenge, straight red, suspended for 3 games. So a bit of a microcosm of the stop-start nature of his career. Right. So he did not play in this one because he's a red card suspension right now, but Chelsea get the win. Brighton hammered Liverpool 3-0. Klopp said this was their worst performance since he got there in 2015. Liverpool have sunk to 9th. They're actually level on points with Chelsea for all the talk about Chelsea's troubles. And this is all occurring against the backdrop, by the way, of stories that John Henry might be ready to sell the club to Qatar. Mm-hmm. So Liverpool, who like to hold themselves up as the bastion of integrity and romanticism and look down on the Manchester Cities and PSGs of the world, they might be going that route. There's some conflicting reports. We'll see what happens.
Wait, some hypocrisy and sanctimony in the world? What up? Everyone's full of ahead. Let's see.
And by the way, this is Brighton, Graham Potter's former club. When he left, a lot of people thought they would struggle. They hired this Italian coach, Roberto De Zerbi, and they've arguably played even better under De Zerbi. Graham Souness was out there saying, this is a terrible appointment because this guy doesn't know the Premier League, that sort of lazy line of thinking, and he's making the Graham Sounnesses of the world look ridiculous because he's doing a phenomenal job, and Brighton are actually above Liverpool and Chelsea in the table right now.
Listen, Janet Jackson, what have you done for me lately and all that? And certainly they've had injuries and they have problems when it comes to Liverpool, and they are, like you said, possibly going through a change in ownership. So there is flux right now. And look, Klopp is a legend. He has probably one of the longest leashes in the game. But at what point does he deserve more criticism than he is getting right now? Do you think we are at this point? I mean, is this on him? Well, it's on him because he's the head coach, but
he definitely deserves some of the blame. And, this is right around the time where it went bad at Dortmund, 7 years.
This is the expiration date.
So there's some talk that we might be reaching the Klopp expiration date here. We'll see.
I mean, he'd still be a legend even if he went someplace else, but it might have just gotten stale, and he might look at it as to say, this is not necessarily going to get any better, and maybe I've already done my best work, and maybe a change is in order, which would be the worst thing for him or for Liverpool.
America's team, Leeds United, lost 2-1 away to Aston Villa. Tyler Adams continues to play well, but some criticism of Brendan Aronson. He's still sitting on 1 goal, the one he scored way back against Chelsea early in the season, just 2 assists. I know Aronson's a player you can't only judge by goals and assists. He does a lot more, but there's a feeling that he's not playing that well. What do you think?
These types of games against the Aston Villas, that's where you need to get points. And when a couple weeks ago when they lost to Man City, I said it doesn't really matter because that's not who you're supposed to be beating. But these are the types of teams where you have to find a way, and ultimately he's going to be judged in. From a Brendan Aronson perspective, a season is long, and in particular this season with the break of the World Cup is really, really unique. And they are going to demand more from these players. And I think we should demand more from Brendan Aronson, and not just in the scoring department, because your point, and I think people can see past that. Yes, they would want him to score more goals and be involved more in the attack, but he does a whole lot more. I'd be more concerned if he wasn't doing the things that make him great, which isn't just about scoring and being dangerous in the attack. As a matter of fact, you could even say that is secondary relative to his work ethic, his smart runs, his ability to make himself available, and just his soccer intellect that helps people around him, even if you can't directly see how it impacts the game.
The big game in Italy, Napoli demolished Juventus 5-1. Osimhen with 2 goals, Kvaratskhelia with a goal and 2 assists. He's been the revelation in European football this season. What a player he is. So Napoli now...
basta. Ha finito.
10 points clear of Juve and Inter, 9 points clear of AC Milan, who drew Lecce this past weekend. So you think this is happening? Napoli are going to win their first Scudetto since 1990.
Yeah, give them the Scudetto now. It's done, and they've done it. Yeah, I think it's over.
And then in France, PSG suffer a 1-0 defeat away to Rennes. Messi and Neymar started this game. Mbappe came on in the second half to no avail. So the gap, just 3 points there between PSG and Lens at the halfway point of the season. So Ligue 1 has some juice here. And Marseille only 5 points back in third place.
You think PSG's worried? No.
Well, they're a big concern. They have Bayern coming up in the Champions League round of 16, so they need to improve their form before then.
Sure, but I'm talking about their Ligue 1.
No, they're going to win.
I think they're going to be fine. Okay. Anything else?
That is it.
All right, let's take another quick break. And when we come back, it's time for Ask Alexi. And we got some calls and some tweets out there, I think. All right, don't go to. Okay, welcome back. And it's time for Ask Alexi. You send us in those questions. Use that hashtag Ask Alexi out there on all the social media platforms. And keep in mind that our handle is SOTU with Alexi out there on the social media platforms. You can, like I said, use that hashtag Ask Alexi, or you can call us on our State of the Union podcast hotline, 657-549-2297. That's 657-549-2297. You can see it right here in the wall if you are watching the pod here. Okay, Mosse, we got some voicemails, right?
Yep, let's hear the first one right now.
Hi, Alexi. Hi, Mosse. This is Smitty from Shelton, Connecticut. My question is, after the third round of group games at the most recent World Cup, FIFA has to scrap these groups of 3 for the 2026 World Cup. There's no way they can do that. However, how does the format work with 12 groups of 4 teams and presumably 24 teams advancing from the group stage into a playdown? How do you see that happening? And I love the show and look forward to your answer. Have a great day.
All right. So there's Smitty with a good question about 2026, and one that has yet to be decided. We're going back and forth, and FIFA has yet to announce and clarify as to what it's going to look like, other than we are going to have 48 teams, Mosse. And in my Rutgers education, when I break this all down, 12 groups of 4, But if you just take the top 2 out of that, then you're going to have some problems because you have 24 teams, and in a round of 16, that doesn't quite work out. And so ultimately, how are you going to figure this out? Now, keep in mind, in the past, when we have been less than 32 teams and this type of situation, mathematical situation, has come up, what they have done to solve this is keep the groups of 4, but have the best third-place teams from a certain amount of groups, ultimately to make it even to be able to do this. We don't know what's going to happen, Mosse. What do you suggest first off happens? Because I think that they are going to still keep groups of 4 and not mess with that historical type of thing that we have seen. And then I think they're going to go best third places or possibly buys. I don't know, but best third places probably.
As you know, I'm a staunch critic of the 48-team World Cup, but
Yes.
my argument has never been dilution of quality. It's been the format. I thought the format they were proposing, 16 groups of 3, was preposterous, so I'm glad to hear they've moved off that, and I'm eagerly awaiting to see what they land on. But I fundamentally think 48 is a weird number to come up with a coherent format. So 12 groups of 4 would be better, I suppose. And then, like you said, I think the only way that works is if you take the top 2 from each group and the 8 best third-place finishers. Then you're playing an entire group stage just to whittle it down from 48 to 32, and then you begin a knockout stage from there. I guess that's probably the most sensible way to go at this point.
Is it? Or you say, listen, all I hear about Mosse is how tired players are and how difficult it is, okay? And the games come fast and furious, even in a World Cup, and it's very difficult. Or you say you give people buys, all right? So the best first-place finishers, you have them sit out, and so they actually sit out that round that then gets played, and then they come back in the next round. I think that's what they're going to do. What do you
Might
think?
be right. What if only 16 advance? The group winner from each of the 12
And then
groups,
the best.
and then just the 4 best second. Let's add some real juice to the group stage.
Ooh, really? Yeah, that could be interesting. Now keep in mind when you start messing with the groups, either down to 3 or the first or the first team coming out, even in your scenario when it is groups of 4, it changes the philosophy and the strategy that has been in place for so many years. When we talk about, it's the percentage that come out at winning their first game and stuff like that. So I don't have a specific answer for you, Smitty, as to what's going to happen. And I think there's a lot of curiosity as to what it's going to look like, because then and the sooner the better, because I think you need to have people prepared mentally and I think strategically on how you are going to approach the group stage, whatever that may look like when you are a team going forward. So I think they need to come to a real quick and decisive type of moment where they say, rip that Band-Aid. If it's going to be crazy stuff in groups of 3, rip that Band-Aid. If it's obviously going to have to be different, but the sooner the better, because I think it's important to have people prepared, not just fans, but also the actual teams.
You could see why they're messing with this, because the last couple of World Cups were so horrible. I mean, clearly the current format wasn't working. This was a solution in search of a problem, as I keep saying.
No, this is not, okay? And so when that person, all right, is standing up there and you're watching it on TV, Mosse, and that young man is putting his hand over his heart, okay, and he is singing that national anthem, and there's tears streaming down his cheek because he has been given the opportunity because of FIFA's foresight, because they said, you know what, we are not going to be as elitist as we have been in the past. We are going to actually be inclusive. We are going to invite people in and have some teams and therefore have some young men that are able to sit up there and represent their country that in the past they wouldn't have been able to do. You're going to scream and yell? No. You're going to sit there and say, okay, I get it. I understand. This is a wonderful moment that person will not ever forget and his countrymen will never forget. Go ahead, Mosse.
Incidentally, I did finally watch the FIFA Netflix documentary.
Did you?
Let's
like I said, it's just a good reminder of the ridiculousness.
let's move on to the next voicemail.
Okay.
Hey, Alexi. Hey, Mosse. This is Evan from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Big Union fan here, and I love the podcast week in and week out. I just have a question that may have an easy answer, but soccer is still continuing to grow in North America, where we have just got out of a World Cup, and we'd like to see our boys continue to get better and better from here on out. My question is, for you guys, why do they continue to put a paywall between us and watching games? How does this benefit from helping the sport and the U.S. men's national team grow as a whole? I believe that this should be available to all eyes no matter what. And thanks for all you guys do, and appreciate your work. Have a good day, guys.
Okay, good question there, Evan. And this is, on topic in terms of what people are talking about in the soccer world right now. By the way, a follow-up to last week, because I had mentioned that with the new deal that the United States Soccer Federation has done with TNT, with Turner and with HBO Max to show the U.S. women's national team and the U.S. men's national team games, including the upcoming 2 games that the U.S. women's national team have in New Zealand that we talked about at the top of the show. I talked about this situation here where the games that are going to be on HBO Max, there is a question as to the ability to show those in a group setting in a bar, and therefore fan fests and American Outlaw parties. I've tried to get some clarity, and they still have not figured this out. But I want to be clear as to what the question is right now. So, for example, if you want to show a game that is on HBO Max right now in a bar type of setting, you have to buy, a pretty expensive package. You can buy that, and you can do that. That gives you the right to do that. Some bars just don't want to do that, as opposed to showing, a game that's on Fox or something like that, where you just throw it on the television and off you go. This is a work in progress. This is a new partnership. They will have figured some things out ahead of time, and they're going to have to figure out some things in real time. This is one of those things. And I am told by the United States Soccer Federation that they are working on a solution, an equitable type of solution, to make sure that they are, to Evan's point, continuing to spread the gospel out there and get as many people to watch this as possible. Also with the business that they are in. So that's that part of it, and I'll follow up if I get any more information going out. But this is not going to change anytime soon, including in these next 2 games with the U.S. Women's team. So if you want to watch the game on HBO Max in a bar setting, that bar will have had to have bought the package and the expensive package in order to do that if you want to watch the U.S. Women's National Team. As it relates to his question here, look, this is, I don't know how old you are, Evan, but I appreciate you thinking about a world bigger than yourself, okay? And while you, and I think your generation, and I know I'm guessing here, are certainly adept and able to function in a world behind paywalls and a world of streaming, not everybody is. And it's, evident in the numbers. However, the world is going towards that. And you, Evan, and your generation are incredibly coveted by those out there that want to sell you stuff, whether it's subscriptions or actual ads out there. And so this is going to be easier and easier in terms of people finding it and people being comfortable with this type of scenario. This was thought about ahead of time in terms of going behind paywalls, and this is an argument and a discussion that happens time and time again because of the streaming world in which we live in and the paywalls that exist now. I don't know about you, Mosse, but it was all a bunch of malarkey, as was once said, in terms of the cord cutting and the ease and the cost relative to what was traditional in terms of your cable box. We're right back where we started. And as a matter of fact, probably at times even paying more with all of the different services, the streaming services that you have out there or that you need out there if you are a fan of the game. So I don't know if this is going to hinder either, I know you were talking about the United States and the U.S. men's national team, if this is going to hurt and hinder the game going forward because it is one more obstacle and one more difficulty and challenge for a certain group out there in order to find this. And by the way, this also applies to Major League Soccer with the Apple deal that they have, or as I said last week, where they are seeing around the corner and they are recognizing that there is going to be a generation that dies off, that can't find it or won't find it or doesn't want to find it, and you will be left with people that will no more look at Apple or HBO or anything else any differently in terms of a broadcast platform that they look at Fox or anybody else out there in a much more traditional type of sense. And it will just all be, this is where I'm going to watch. And how they ultimately get there, by the way, will become much easier going forward, and people will find a way, and they've already have in some areas found a way to coalesce all of these different streams and platforms that we have, and it'll just all be right back to where we started, where it'll just be one type of, won't be an actual box, but it'll be a virtual box that we just pick our channels, and they're coming from whatever platform that it ends up being. But I like that you're thinking about this, and I don't want less people to watch the game. I want it to be available and easily available to as many different people as possible. But I also recognize the business behind these decisions and the long-term business plan and the technology involved that goes on with these types of decisions. So good questions there. Anything else, Mosse?
That is it.
All right. We're going to take another quick break, and when I come back, I'm going to have my one for the road, so don't go anywhere. All right, welcome back. It's the end of our show, and at the end of each and every show, I give you my one for the road. Mosse, I was out in Philadelphia, and as I mentioned, with a lot of soccer people, and obviously the big story and the talking point and what everybody wanted to talk about was, the continued saga and soap opera that is, the Reynas and the Berhalters and everything that's going on. By the way, nothing has changed since we last spoke. If and when it does, we will certainly bring it up. But it has spurred another discussion and a deeper discussion and an ongoing discussion in the soccer world, and I guess in the greater sports world out there, about the situation and the climate that exists out there when it comes to moms and dads. And this is nothing new. I mean, you can go back to Todd Marinovich and stuff like that, but how they interact and act as parents of athletes, and in some cases, elite athletes. And look, there are now stories coming out, I guess you'd call them horror stories, but it's in an effort to show that while this is an extreme situation when it comes to the Reynas and the Berhalters, it's not necessarily new in terms of moms and dads poking their nose into places where you feel they shouldn't be, and overstepping and overreaching when it comes to the influence and the impact that they have with their player and their player's situation in teams and with coaches. For example, John Hackworth, former U.S. under-17 coach, on his experience coaching his son's youth team. And this is a guy who's been in it all. I mean, and I'm going to quote him. He says, "In between games, I had a mom go ballistic on me because her son didn't start in a game. I do think that and he's talking about this phenomenon of helicopter parents and moms and dads injecting themselves into the sports landscape that their kids inhabit, that it is more commonplace in this country. And the reality is that it is problematic." Okay, I get that. I don't think that this is necessarily something new. I think that anybody that has ever coached at any level at some point has had a parent come and, again, overstep the bounds there. And sometimes it's a civil and respectful type of disagreement, and sometimes it's probably some shouting. We have created a situation where the stakes are either high or the perception is they are incredibly high, and from a very, very young age. And that probably is where it has changed the most, in that the vision and the belief, and at times the hope and the dream from a very, very young age has come into play that little John or little Julie are going to be, the next Christian Pulisic or the next Alex Morgan, or, insert your player there. And that game and that moment is going to define them and is going to steer them in one direction or the other, and the course is going to ultimately dictate whether they do become these incredible stars. We talk about specialization, and we talk about, from a very young age, players playing at quote-unquote an elite level and being talked about and groomed, if you will, to be elite athletes so that then they can have a better chance at going to college and getting a better scholarship. That in and of itself is not necessarily anything new. But it's easy to say it's problematic and we should change. But I don't know what the answer is, other than having parents that have perspective and that understand that while we all want to protect our children and we all want to support our children, injecting yourself into a situation like that actually hurts them. It hurts them in the eyes of their peers. It hurts them in the eyes of their coaches. But it doesn't help them not to fail. It doesn't help them not to at times be in difficult and uncomfortable situations, even at a young age. And again, I'm all for supporting, and I want my kids to know that I support them. But in no way, shape, or form would I ever think it is my place to go up and scream and yell at a coach or disagree with a coach. You have put them in positions of leadership and power and authority to make those decisions. And if you want to coach, go ahead, you coach. But if you don't want to, let the coaches do what they want to do. And look, I know it's easier said than done, and emotions get involved, and you go forward. But it was interesting to be around so many coaches this weekend in Philadelphia at the coaches convention, and I know that was on their minds, and I think they used it as a jumping off point to talk more about ultimately what a coach's role is. And time again, and this actually, I was heartened coming out of Philadelphia, because time and time again there was the echoing and the affirmation that as a coach, as a soccer coach, even as an elite soccer coach of elite players, your responsibility goes well beyond making them better soccer players. And I think that they take that to heart. And in an already difficult type of situation, when parents make it even more difficult by injecting themselves into the situation, it's a recipe for disaster. And so the training is needed, the understanding is needed, the perspective is needed from a coaching perspective to be able to deal with that. And the best coaches make it very, very clear before their season or their time with these players start as to what is expected out of the parents, and what is tolerated and what is not tolerated going forward. And if you don't like the way somebody is coaching, if you don't like the situation that you have put your child in, and in many cases they are children, then take them out and go someplace else. Anyway, Mosse, anything to say before we go?
Now let's get out of here.
Oh, one more thing before we go.
Oh, boy.
In thinking, and this applies to the thing that we just talked about. Again, we still don't have any clarification or understanding or further understanding about what the coaching search is when it comes to the U.S. men's national team, where Gregg Berhalter stands. But I was talking to someone in Philadelphia about this. There's a part of me now that has gone the way of thinking that I actually want Gregg Berhalter named as the head coach. Not because, and as you know, this goes against everything I believe in terms of multiple cycles. But this is where my sadness that I talked about last week has turned into anger. I am angry that Gregg Berhalter is going to be denied the opportunity, even though I don't think that you should continue for multiple cycles, that is ultimately going to be denied this opportunity for what has ultimately happened to him. I think it is BS, and I think it is unfair. And I have come to the point where I am actually advocating for not letting that win, not letting that happen is the best course. And saying, no, we are not going to let something like that take down a good man and deny him an opportunity. If he was in consideration for the U.S. men's national team coaching job, and by all accounts he was, whatever that percentage was, I hope to God that it hasn't changed. I think it probably has. And that not only saddens me, as I said before, but that angers me. But I don't want that to win. And in order for it not to win, there has to be a stand taken. And that stand, as crazy as it sounds to me, is naming Gregg Berhalter as the head coach. And so I don't think that anybody's going to listen to me. I don't think that is ultimately going to happen. But that's where I find myself here on this Monday, January 16th.
Well, you saved your juiciest take for the end of the pod.
All right, we'll see if people listen. We'll see if people listen all the way through. You know, it's important that you listen. It's even more important that you listen all the way through.
Any fans of the pod in Philadelphia?
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that. Everybody kept coming up and asking me about you. First off, wondering if you were there, and I had to disappoint them and say that you weren't there. But I bring back incredible tidings and well wishes and thanks and love from the masses out there that came up and said that they listened to the State of the Union podcast. So it warmed my heart, but also you are, and this is nothing new, you are an incredible star, and the people have recognized and they love you out there.
We were talking off the air about this. I'll say it on the air. In our last pod in Doha, you went on this whole spiel about how great I am, how everybody loves me, and I did not return the favor and say anything nice about you. And my mom gave me a tongue lashing for that.
Oh, that's not necessary. It's just implied. Don't worry. That's very nice of you. All right, listen, we've gone a little bit long here. I say that every week. We don't really go necessarily that long. These are kind of pretty uniform in terms of we try to keep it, and producer Sean is pretty good at keeping us in line. Pretty good. Not great, but he's pretty good
when he shows up.
So what's that? All right, so we will talk to you again later on in this week for our second pod of the week. As Mosse mentioned, we'll preview what's coming up on the weekend, and who knows, we might have some more news going forward when it comes to all the different stories that we have talked about, or who knows, some new stories that we might want to talk about. Again, our State of the Union podcast hotline, as always, 657-549-2297, 657-549-2297. Use the hashtag AskAlexi. Continue to rate and review and subscribe and download and do all of those things. As I've mentioned before, we're getting incredible numbers, not just in terms of experiential things like being in Philadelphia and talking to everybody, but the actual data, the hard data over there, and the science of it, if you will, is telling us that a lot of people are tuning in, and we couldn't be happier. It makes us incredibly proud to be able to do it each and every week, a couple times each and every week. So we'll see you, and we'll talk to you later on this week. And until then, and as always, my friends, size the day.